Hey guys, it's Ryan, Tokyo Fun Hunter, coming at you from Tokyo, Japan. I just made a video right beforehand about crime, and it made me kind of like think about, because I mentioned that the crime rate in Japan is so low, but the suicide rate is so high. And I know it's a very touchy subject, but I think it's something that it's worth discussing at least. I can't, I don't have like statistics in front of me, but it's pretty well known that the suicide rate in Japan is super high. Why is that? This kind of country where it's got a good foundation of history and culture. Why is that? Why is that? So, I hope I'm not stepping on anybody's toes or anything like that, but I thought it was worth discussing. So, just a heads up, it is bright and early morning. I thought I'd make this. I'm in the mood to make some videos and talk about Japan. I got my cup of coffee, so I hope it's okay if I'm drinking a little coffee beforehand. So, suicides. Why is the suicide rate in Japan so? Yeah, I got my hair all crazy. Why is the suicide rate in Japan so high? 2 days ago, which is very common in Japan, we were delayed 30 minutes. We were delayed 30 minutes because guess what? A guy jumped onto the train tracks in front of the train to commit suicide. 6 months, I think it was 6 months ago. A guy in protest was climbing across the scaffold in Shinjuku, at Shinjuku JR Station. This is on the news, by the way. I think you could probably Google this. He lit himself on fire. Lit himself on fire in a way to protest. And you just see everybody like, what? And they put him out. Apparently he didn't commit suicide. He was trying to commit suicide. They put him... This guy lit himself on fire, burned for like a good, I want to say 15 seconds, 20 seconds, which is a long time, got put out, survived, and now he's burned to a crisp and, going to be under medical care his whole life, and at the fact that now he has to, like, pay the authorities, pay for what he did in the property he ruined. People commit suicide a lot. There's a famous forest in by where I was living in Yamanashi-ken. It's by Mount Fuji. I forgot. I want to say I forgot the name of the forest, but the forest there is known as Suicide Forest because people walk in. They walk in there and hang themselves. And they get lost. Right? They go in there on purpose to commit suicide. They go in there. They get lost. They lose themselves there, and make a hangman's knot or whatever they want to do and commit suicide. Why is the suicide rate so high? Now this is one of those subjects that, hey, maybe some people are going to disagree with, and that's fine. This is just my opinion. But I believe a lot of them are... Japan's a tough place mentally. The business culture, the culture itself, is a very, like, in person... You're very respectable. You're very honorable. You're very courteous and kind. But that doesn't necessarily mean that's the person's real feelings. I'll give an example. If you're a Western person, you might know this one. Okay, The Last Samurai, where Tom Cruise is sitting at the table and the wife's like, dude, she's whispering to her brother, like, dude, this guy smells like pigs. You need to tell him to take a shower. And then they're kind of like, smiling and he's like kind of thinking to himself, well, very nice, they're very nice people. That's kind of actually a very accurate portrayal where the presentation will be nice and they'll never call you out on something, but at the same time their thoughts might be very different. This can be seen in business relationships. In business is a very kind of passive way where they're never say if you're a boss and a subordinate, the boss is never going to be like, hey man, you need to get this done, or this project, say you make an art project, this sucks. Western countries are used to somebody yelling at them if it's not good, redo it. In Japan, it's like, you did a great job, but I recommend trying it another way. Or they'll ask somebody else to tell them, actually, I think the boss said you need to redo the project. Right? They'll go around the system in order to not have any conflict with that person, in order to not have any friction with anybody. And this can be actually very Draining. This could be really draining. If, like, say if your relationships and you're never upfront about each other until you're like actually married, and this happens quite often. Especially in business, there's a lot of friction and there's a lot of ways, and especially if you're not able to express yourself that much. Now, anybody who knows me, if any of my friends know me, yeah, I'm a very, very loud person in Japan. Super loud. Uh, and I think being able to express yourself is a very big deal, and also just helps the soul. Helps you feel good in a positive way. But it also, like, hey, if you have grievances, hey, it's good to vent with your friends once in a while and tell them like your woes. But this does not happen in Japan that often. People really bottle it up. They bottle up both their good feelings, so they don't really express themselves on how happy they are, and also their bad feelings, which can be really detrimental to your personal health and mental health. So this happens a lot. But I do believe, yeah, a lot of people get strained with family. There's a lot of family commitment. In Western ideology, when you become an adult, it's really about being independent. You're independent by being self-sustaining. You're able to take care of yourself. You're able to get your own job. You're living on your own means. That's what's considered independent. What's becoming an adult in like Western society. In Eastern society, it's really about sorry, burped a little bit. In Eastern society, it's really about you being interdependent. You being able to kind of give back to the family, to the community, to the company, right? So in Western societies, it's really about yourself. Like, okay, now you're independent, you're self-sustaining. When you become an adult Eastern in Eastern cultures, it really is about you giving back to the group. And I don't know. It's tough call. I don't say it's bad. It actually works really well for, like, say if I was a business owner, like, and everybody was working to make the business great. It's a great thing. But if you're like an employee, it's good to always be giving back, but don't sacrifice your life. As a recruiter, you meet people all the time that it's really tough for them to change jobs, and you'll hear them like, man, I'm not happy at my job. I've had people not even just recruiting, but like aokigahara, where they'll consider it almost like therapy, where they're like, my boss is hurting me, my job is hurting me, my family's hurting me, and you're like, oh my god, well, why don't you change? And they're like, no, that's not an option. I can't do that. Why? I'm like, no, why I can't. It's just part of the culture where you have to really keep constantly giving back. I'm gonna sacrifice for my good of the company. And that, I'm not saying that that's not a noble thing, but you also got to take care of yourself first. You have to take care of yourself before you help other people. If you're not in a position to help yourself, then you can't help others. If you got to help yourself first before you help others. A good example is if on an airplane. I know this is an analogy. If you're on an airplane, say the oxygen mask come down. What do they say? They say help yourself first before you help the person next to you. And that's very, very key. Where if you're constantly just sacrificing for the company, life is, I think, my beliefs are that life's supposed to be abundant, life is supposed to be fun, life is supposed to be about you challenging yourself. If you hate something, if you're at a job that you hate, and if you hate it and you're not learning anything new, might be time to consider a change. A lot of Japanese people, this does not happen. They stay in the same kind of cycle and habits their whole life. And it's very draining. And sometimes they just say, hey, enough's enough. And they commit suicide. And they commit suicide a lot on the train. I think it's because of the insurance. I heard somewhere it's because of the insurance. That the train systems, if you die on the train systems, they pay out to your family. So, I mean, I don't know statistically if I'm right, but I'm going to say once a day, people are committing suicide on the train lines. Every time you hear like a delay, yeah, it might be the snow, it might be the rain, but if it's for a longer period, like 20 minutes, it's a suicide. And I've seen it actually happen. I've seen a guy all of a sudden just drop off in like nearby me. He just dropped. I'm like, what? Holy shit! And yeah, the suicide rate is very amazing in Japan. It's really a shame, but it's something that obviously I don't know if Japanese people really like even understand. Like it's just so endued in the culture to keep going, keep doing the same thing, keep giving to the family, I'm saying those are noble decisions, but not if you're killing yourself mentally and spiritually and emotionally, and which leads to you actually killing yourself in real life. Um, so it's something to be aware of that a lot of people, especially at, they let it all out only at certain events where they have the permission to really let it out. You go to, like, remember I was talking about baseball games, people go nuts, karaoke, people go nuts, drinking parties, people go incredibly fun. It's kind of like that's the only time they can really have like the permission socially to be outgoing, be loud. At a sporting event, when they're at a karaoke, they get to like totally belt it out. In just okay, current day to day culture, people are very on the way to work. Even they're silent. Nobody's smiling. You got to get to work. You got to get to work. They're in one frame of mind. People are not loud, outgoing people, and I mean, it's that's fine, but not at the extent of like bottling up all negative emotions. Okay, if you're gonna be silent and that's how you like it, cool. But it's something that I think that needs more a closer look, especially with companies and governments and communities and culture wise too. I'm not saying the culture. I think the culture in Japan is very very nice. I love it. I wouldn't be here if I didn't enjoy it. But it is one of those little like there's a pros and cons. I'm not saying American Western culture is better, but it's just like you see the pros and cons of each one and what works and what doesn't. And I think there needs to be at least a little emotion. It's yeah. So the suicide rate in Japan is super high. Um, some things I think it's mostly because of the salaryman culture. That, by the way, yeah, normal working day is like six. Normal working week is 40 hours a week, of course, but 20 to 40 extra hours unpaid, which would drive anybody crazy. I mean, I work on commissions, so I work because I don't really get paid my salary. I pretty much only make money if I make the company money, and that's kind of like my motivation. But it's a very thing that people. It's like common. It's like every time I've worked for Japanese companies, like in a Japanese salaryman company. No. And it's like it's normal. On the contract it'll say, oh, normally we do 20 hours of unpaid overtime work. I had a company even pitched me the other day. I was meeting a company, they're looking for new staff, and I was asking like, tell me a little bit about the working environment stuff, and they're like, oh yeah, we work normal hours, 9 to 5, and usually about 20 to 30 unpaid hours per week. I was like, besides the 40 hours, they're like 70 hours total. They're like, yeah. And this is normal. This is not the first time. This is a normal thing. So imagine a country that does not, Japan is a great country. This little tiny thing is they don't really reveal all their emotions up front. They bottle them in a lot. And at the same time, they're being overworked like crazy. Overworked like crazy. And you're just asking for, and it's kind of like also the culture of giving toward the many, and forgetting about yourself. A lot of people would think that like, great sacrifice, but you got to make sure that you're in a healthy state, that you have the ability to be giving. If you keep giving and giving and have nothing at the end, you starve. I'd say you got to make sure to be. I'm not saying I'm not trying to teach selfishness, but you need to be able to survive, and that's a big deal. And Japan's an expensive place, and I'm trying to make the point that some things need to be prioritized. And I believe that your mental and emotional, spiritual self should be prioritized. Your family should be prioritized more than the company. And also just being able to be yourself and being able to have that permission to be more open than just in occasions where you're drinking, which has become the point in Japan. Now, I'm not saying this is for everybody, but I'm going to say the majority. And I'm sure anybody living in Japan will totally agree with me. Anyway, guys, yeah, the suicide rate in Japan is super high. The crime rate is super low, but the suicide rate is very high out of a country that's a very peaceful, calm country. And I think it does need a little, like, kind of deeper, uh, a deeper look, a closer look on why that is. And it doesn't have to be, I'm not, it doesn't need to be by me, but, just from other people as well, and kind of, taking that into consideration. Anyway, I know it's not the most happiest topic, but I think it was something that some people might be curious about. This is just my opinion, by the way. There might be a few things that I might be off on, but it's it's some things I have observed. Anyway, kind of a kind of a weird way to wake up in the morning talking about this, but it did kind of inspire me to kind of like talk about it. Anyway, guys, yeah. Anyway, I hope the rest of the day is great, and I'm going to enjoy my coffee, and I'll talk to you guys next one. Please subscribe to our channel. Check out our other videos on, I like to talk about stories and interviews and cool things about Japan, as both the good and the pros and the cons, and some of my experiences, and I feel like I've had some pretty unique experiences in Japan. So please tune in, comment below. I'll try to answer as many as I can. Thanks again for stopping by, guys. All right. Talk to you guys next time. Peace.